Today we're going to talk about Revgrips and my experience with them. These are Revgrips. They are an adjustable suspension grip, shock absorbing grip system, Revgrips, revolutionary grips, and they can be used for mountain bike, BMX, or ATV. I'd heard about these for years. They've been around since 2013. I was always a little curious about them, and I had been trying some different grips lately. I love the Wolf Tooth Fat Paw, which is a 36 millimeter foam grip. I'll put a picture of it here. And in the last year, I've cycled through some different grips, and I've used the Trail One Hell's Gate, which is a 32 millimeter. The Wolf Tooth is 36 millimeter. And I have used the Tinker Juarez ODI dreadlocks. They're called dreadlocks. So those were both, I think, 32 millimeter. And the Tinker Juarez ones are nice and cushy, but I have pretty big mitts. And they just felt a little bit small, and they would hurt my hand at the end of a long downhill a bit. So I kept going back to the Wolf Tooth Fat Paws, which I like, but they don't give you a ton of feedback from the bars, and they still make my hands hurt a little bit at the end of like Big Sister out at Hawes, or Red Mountain Rush, trails like that. And I was thinking that maybe Revgrips might have something more. I ran into my friend Adam a couple weeks ago out at Hawes, and we were talking for a while, and I looked down at his bars and I saw this little Revgrips end cap on his bars, and I talked to him about them, and he said he loved them. He'd been using them for 3 years, and they were some of the only grips that really relieved any hand pain for him, and that the set he had lasted him for 3 years. And at one point he had to switch to another set. I'm not sure why, but just briefly. And he said he really missed having the Revgrips. I don't know if he was on a rental bike or if he was getting a repair part for the Revgrips. They do have parts, and I guess they take a little bit of maintenance over the years. So these are the 35 millimeter grips, and they're the biggest diameter that they have. 1 millimeter difference. Didn't think it would bother me. I've also been using the One Up thick grips, which are 35 millimeter, and I do like those quite a bit. Now, they are actually a very thin layer of rubber around this plastic barrel. There's a tiny flange on the plastic here, but honestly, I don't think it goes that deep. And this section of the grip is very thin. I press in, and almost instantly I can feel the plastic under there. So they sit in these end caps with a little rubber grommet that goes inside there and hooks onto there. And there's a little washer that goes in between, and they say these are tuning washers. I'm not really sure how changing these out fixes anything, but it creates a little space between the end of the grip and the bar end. So I went with the softest one, and everyone said that they usually ended up on the softest one. So I figured, why not? So the install was kind of eventful, and I would not say that they are easy to install. I went to install them. I've installed dozens and dozens and dozens of pairs of grips. I've been riding mountain bikes off and on since the late 80s, and I'm a gear fiend. I'm always trying new stuff. So I've gone through many grips over the years. foam, lock-on rubber, you know, every brand in the world. So when you put them on, you put the little rubber piece into the end cap here. You can kind of see it there, how it fits. That little piece fits in there real nice. It takes a little bit to get them in sometimes, but it's not bad. And then you put that on the flange there, but you put this little washer in between. That creates some movement, and it really does. This just floats on the bar. The grip doesn't touch the bar, only the end lock nut does. And then you put these bar end plugs in, and then you tighten down the end caps. So they tell you to torque them to 1.7 Newton meters. And I have a pretty nice torque wrench that I've used for years. Never had a problem with it. It's rated 2 to 10 Newton meters, but you can dial it in below 2, no problem. I felt weird about it because I never had to torque. I've never used a torque wrench on grips. I mean, you just tighten them down a bit and they don't move. They lock on pretty well. So I went to do it, and one of them, when I was putting it in with just an Allen key to get them nice and tight, started to kind of round out in the end part here, the pins that go in. And I stopped and I was like, well, I'll just use the torque wrench. So I went to a different one, went to torque it on, heard the little pop. Cool. Went to the next one, torque wrench. It popped, and the end of the nut popped off, the bolt, and fell on the ground. And I said, uh-oh, that's not good. And I went back over to the one that had torqued on, and I touched it, and the end of the bolt fell off. Wow. I mean, 1.7 Newton meters is not much torque at all. And again, with the Allen key, the other one was rounding out. So obviously these are the ones that broke, and the bolt is stuck in there and they're unusable. So I wrote them, said, hey, these are made of cheese. I'm not really sure what happened. They asked me what torque wrench I used. I showed them. They said, no, you got to get a different torque driver, but we'll send you new end caps. I said, okay. So I used a different torque driver. A week later, the end caps come up. Now we're 2 weeks out from me ordering them, and installed them with a 1.7 Newton meter thing. No problem, but man, it felt scary as I was twisting them because, again, I ended up taking out that one bolt. They send an extra one with it when they send it, and replacing it with the spare because it was rounded out, and I hadn't even used a torque wrench on it. Because once they snapped, I took them straight off. I didn't want them getting stuck on my bars. So they sent me new ones, and I installed it all and went out for a ride with my buddy Dustin, and here's what happened on that ride. Dustin and I are going up to do Big Sister so I can test out the old Revgrips. All right, first run of the Revgrips down Big Sister. This one always hurts my hands, so it's a true test. All right, here we go. So really tell if I need to keep searching. Oh, jeez. Break them up are gnarly now. My hands are already hurting. I might be back to the foam already. Yep. I think if you got bigger hands, these are not the solution. But I don't see that this is helping in any way for the price. Oh. Yeah, my hands are sore. I'll be sending these back. I'll be sending these grips back. Dude, they're $90 and my hands hurt like a quarter of the way down. I would say I'm having more hand pain now than I've had on a ride in years. That's not a good thing. I mean, I'm doing like cross country right here. And my hands are hurting. It's just like mild up and downs. Not like a gnarly downhill, not real rocky. And my hands are sore. I honestly feel like maybe I'm riding worse today because of the Revgrips. I'm just thinking about my hands a lot and the pain I'm feeling. I put the softest tuning washers on as I watched a bunch of reviews and people were talking about how they say you should start with the medium, but most people end up on the softest if they're dealing with hand pain, which I don't deal with a ton, but I'd like to reduce it. But now I'm in insane pain, insane in the pain. My hands are throbbing, dude.
Huh?
My hands are throbbing in pain.
Yeah, are they really?
Yeah. 30-day guarantee. Like, I'm in more pain now than I've been on any ride in years in my hands. So yeah, I finished that ride and I had more pain in my hands than I'd ever had on a single ride that I can remember in my history of 36, 37 years riding mountain bikes. It was odd and surprising and oddly surprising. But the thing that I didn't mention before is that they have a 30-day money back guarantee that you will like them. So I was relieved because these are not cheap. You can look up the prices. This is the Pro Set, and I'd sold a bunch of bike parts, bought some new tires, figured I'd try these out since I had some money to fling around on a couple cheaper bike parts. And I contacted them. So I got back an email from the guy who I'd talked to before. Now, bear in mind, when I contacted them about these bolts snapping, he said, our policy at Revgrips is to cover anything that could be construed as defective, no matter what the circumstances, and it is entirely possible that you got a bad screw. We purchase 50K screws at a time, so it stands to reason there could definitely be some bad ones mixed in. Fair, right? So he shipped those out to me. Cool. Got them on, did the ride. I wrote them, said, hey, actually, I did put the medium washers on and gave it a short ride. No change. Actually, might have been worse, but I don't know. I couldn't tell. It just hurt. So I contact him, hear back, and he says, hey, we sent you some replacement parts. Your warranty/demo is null and void. Sorry. I can send you new barrels in a different size to help you try and get them tuned in. What? My mind was blown. I mean, you told me these screws can tend to be defective and they are made of cheese. And He said, no, if you read, there's a bunch of different versions of their guarantee on their website, but there's one that goes really deep, and it says, any scratches, anything, you can't get your money back, which is kind of wild because people are going to lay their bikes down on the ground when they're out mountain biking. People are going to lay them down when they're getting them out of the car, off the truck, taking a break, and you're going to probably scratch these end plugs, which, by the way, are impossible to turn. You have to put either a wrench or, I use the pliers on these to even get them started and big enough to kind of get stuck in the bar. And then you have to really hold down here and crank to get this rubber to expand and get them stuck in the bar. So, these got a little scratched up on the inside, but that's not cosmetic because it's inside the bar. Who knows? So I was pretty livid, and I wrote him back and I said, well, that's pretty lame. These are really expensive grips. Grips are very cheap. You can get ESI grips for $19, and these are 4 times that, just about. So when he said that, I said, I find this to be kind of a fraudulent practice. You told me that these parts can tend to be defective, and you replaced them for me. I didn't even have the grips installed yet. If I would have known this, I would have just sent them back the second the parts broke and told them that, they're awful. He said, I'm really sorry. I said, that's not really good for me. But I also wrote him, I said, I will be sure to let it be known that your policy on your demo/return guarantee is not really what you make it out to be in your advertising. The fine print on there is wild, and honestly, the fine print just says if you send them back damaged, that you can't get a refund. Now, what I have here is a set of grips that works. They're not damaged. They sent me 2 replacement parts because their bolts are made of cheese, and they broke. So this was upsetting. He said, okay, how about we compromise and we try some other barrels for you, and I try and get you comfortable on them. I don't want you to be in pain. And then if you don't like it, I'll give you your money back if you ship them back. And I said, and he asked me what grips I'd been using. So I said, well, I still think that's a pretty terrible policy, but I'll try it if you really think it's going to work. I said, I don't know how. Here's the grips I've been using. This afternoon, I got an email back from another person at the company that said, hey, you are using the largest barrel that we have, and usually the fix for the problems you're saying these grips are giving you is going to a larger barrel. So I apologize for the confusion, and I see where you're coming from. Let's just get you fixed up and send them back to me. Send them to my name, send them here, we'll get you covered. Bravo. That's the way a company should handle it, especially when they have a guarantee like this. So I'm not going to post this until I get my refund, but I will say that these may work for you. These might be the best grip you've ever tried. For me, they were the worst grips I've ever tried. Honestly, I've never had a grip put me in so much pain. I mean, it wasn't excruciating, but I got back to the truck and I was just like, wow, my hands hurt. And on cross-country runs, we did Big Sister, which is kind of a chunky downhill run, but it's a blue trail. And usually I'm not in pain from that trail until like the end. I can feel a little numb, or not numbness, but just soreness in my hands from just riding all the washboard and stuff. So they're going to make good on it, it sounds like. And I applaud them for that. So if you're going to buy Revgrips, it's a cool idea. I think it may be a bit gimmicky, but they have a lot of testimonials of people who love them. My friend Adam swears by them. They just didn't work for me. And that's okay, but don't offer me a guarantee that they'll work for me and then send me, some replacement parts for something that just seemed pretty sketchy to begin with, and then say that it's voided because of that. That's pretty wild. I could have, I'm sure these cost them 10 cents. So that's Revgrips. Check them out. Maybe you love it. Maybe it's gimmicky. It's not cheap. Watch some other reviews, see what people have to say. Don't take my word 100% for it because it just didn't work for me. So I can't say that I love it, but I'm not going to be totally biased against the company because they did do me right. And as soon as this gets refunded, you'll see it posted. Thanks for watching.